Welcome back. I am John P. Today we are going to be talking about whether or not watches can come with defects. Can watches come from high-end manufacturers with defects? This is a question that I am asked all of the time on my Instagram, The Real John P. I'm reached out by people that just maybe they receive a watch from the manufacturer directly from an authorized dealer and they get the watch and there's an issue and they reach out to me with some thought that maybe I can help or give them a signal of whether or not this is normal and whether or not this should happen and under what circumstances, what things can come wrong and what can the consumer do to protect their interest after they've purchased the watch. Before we jump into this quick discussion here today, I want to share with you on the wrist today, IWC Portuguese chronograph, green dial. I love this thing. Very beautiful, very cool watch, new to my collection. And guys, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com where you can buy, sell, and trade watches, as well as sinclairstraps.com for the best premium luxury watch straps made by the same manufacturers that make the leather straps for your favorite watch brands. Also, you can find me on Instagram, The Real John P, which is where I received an inquiry that inspired this video. So if you've been on the internet, and I think you have because you're watching this video, right? Maybe you've been to Reddit and other places where watch collectors talk, like Instagram, for that matter. But there are occasionally these images that float around of something wrong with a Rolex dial, right? Maybe there's some Rolex dials or Explorers that have the wrong numbers, or there's misaligned indices or indicators. And even from brands that come at a much more approachable price point, right? Like a Seiko, there's a common issue that can happen where the chapter ring is not aligned with the bezel and the rest of the watch. And this is something that does happen, right? It goes on where some other watches have issues brand new from the manufacturer as well. And there's frequent debate among collectors whether or not this should happen, the quality control. And I see it in the comments below, and I'm sure I'll see it here as well. There's gonna be people that are gonna be very opinionated about the fact that watches come with issues sometimes, and it shouldn't, right? There's people that say, well, a Seiko, costs $400 or $300. They should have quality control. And the reality is that there is quality control, but there's always issues when at scale, right? If you produce a smaller batch, more attention can be made to that detail, right? But at a much larger scale, things are going to slip through the cracks. And that's generally where I see this happening, right? If you consider a manufacturer is really a gross misstatement for the brand I'm about to mention, just because it implies much more production volume than they produce. But if you look at something like an FP Journe, which is producing, roughly 1,000 to 1,200 pieces per year, that varies, but it's rumored to be around that for a very long time, they're going to be able to pay much more attention to detail, not only because of the steeper price point, but also the volume of production is lower, so more attention to detail per watch can be paid, and also ensure that there's going to be less issues out of the factory just because they produce so much less, right? Now, if a watch company is producing 1 million watches per year, which Rolex has now basically surpassed, it's rumored, they're not telling us this, but we know that it's at least 1 million pieces per year coming out of the Rolex factory, even though it's not enough to keep up with demand at this time. The reality is 1 million watches, something is going to slip through the cracks, right? There are people that work on these watches for the most part, right? People are producing these things, assisted by robots, particularly when speaking of Rolex. But from other manufacturers that produce that many watches or more, there are people that are involved, and people are going to make mistakes, right? Someone is going to have a bad day. Maybe something is happening at their house, or the reality is people just sometimes, especially when doing repetitive tasks, may miss something, right? We've all made mistakes knowing we're a person and not a computer, right? So when people are involved in these things, someone's just going to make a mistake, and someone out there in the world may get that mistake watch, choose to go online and post about it. And the reality is they were just 1 or 2 or 3 out of the million, let's say, people that experience the problem. And that's what we're seeing. And when we go online, sometimes there can be these echo chambers. And self-fulfilling prophecies of people hunting these things down. Like, does Rolex ever make a mistake? Does Seiko ever make a mistake? And these issues can sometimes look much bigger than maybe they are. Now, I'm not saying that we can determine this with certainty, but I'm really just kind of providing my thoughts as someone that has seen so many watches. We get so many watches, thousands of watches through the door at Del Rey Watch, both new and pre-owned. And I would say that new watches, we haven't really seen a lot of issues with them. And I think that's a really great indicator for the notion that the brands generally, and I'm speaking in generalities here of all brands, but there's always some variance between the brands, but when speaking of brands, there's generally going to be no issues, and that's what the brands are trying to do, right? These are luxury watches, they come at high price tags, they have much greater quality control than other things out there probably in the world, but there's going to be some things that are going to slip through the cracks, and some people are going to get angry and they're going to leave it, right? It's kind of like the review systems on Google or Yelp. Maybe for whatever reason, a chef at a restaurant had a bad day, or he generally made a mistake. He's a person, and someone got a bad dish, and they decided to write a raving negative review. Maybe they're a critic, a person out there, and they just happen to have a voice, and that's just the way the statistics and the probability went for that watch. Now, it's something I see all the time, and it's just a reality of man-made things. There are going to be issues, especially when there's moving parts, which can break and exacerbate some of these issues. Now, what watches do I see this happen with the most? I do see issues happening with watches that tend to be more produced in volume or more approachable in price. Now, this isn't me trying to bash more affordable watches, but I think the reality is, when factoring in the cost of production, generally we can say that there has to be give and take somewhere, whether that's the volume or the quality of something, and there may be a little bit less quality control than someone who's producing 1,000 watches that average retail price of $30,000 US. They can just afford to bake in the price a little bit more, higher quality control, higher standards, checks and balances, than a watch that they need to keep very tight costs because it's more of a volume game. And that's something we might see from a Seiko for that matter, but I don't think that should be a negative in any way. It's just a different type of watch with different expectations, and I think that's something we could all kind of acknowledge and honestly enjoy about watches in general. Is there's going to be different levels of attention to these things, and there are going to be things that slip through the cracks, probably at every level. But I don't really see, if someone was to ask me, do I see this happen in some brands more than others? Not really. We have the chapter ring issue that comes up a lot with Seiko, but we don't get a lot of other issues with Seiko for that matter. They're sending watches out the door that keep generally near chronometer spec a lot of the time. It doesn't mean it stays that forever, but out of the door, it's coming out pretty great. And I don't see any other brands that are really dropping the ball a whole lot and having a lot of quality control issues, because once again, a lot of these companies have been doing this for such a long time. They have all of this really worked out for the most part. Now, what do I think a consumer or a purchaser of a new watch can do in the circumstance, right? Someone messaged me on Instagram and they said, hey, I forgot the name of the brand. I'd have to look it up, and I also don't want to necessarily bash any brands or authorized dealers. But they did say they bought a new watch and they took it home and they found that there was something on the dial. And generally, if you go to an authorized dealer, you buy a new watch, you wear it around, they're not taking the watch back. That at that point, after they've signed you up for the warranty and all that, it kind of becomes between you and the manufacturer at that point. So if you do buy a new watch, make sure to really take a look at it in the store, make sure everything is working, is generally what I would advise, as well as maybe using someone like us at Del Rey Watch who can do that on your behalf with a new watch. But you do need to take a very close look and make sure that everything you get is what you want, because not all the authorized dealers, the reality is they're not going to do it. The salesperson may be new. You just don't know. So always keep that peace in mind and check it out yourself, because at a certain point, it does become between you and the manufacturer. And really your recourse for the most part is ultimately going to be between you and the manufacturer. You're going to have to send the watch back. Maybe they just give you another one. Maybe the manufacturer will even send you a refund. But generally how this works is the manufacturer is just going to fix the issue for you. And with that comes waiting periods. And I do see people that reach out to me that unfortunately buy a watch, they have a hair on the dial. For whatever reason, a hair slipped in it didn't get caught in quality control. That relies on visuals. Someone's eyes were a little off that day, or the light just glared a certain way and it came across as a glare and not a hair. And you send the watch back, let's say it's Rolex, you send it to them, and it's just gonna take time, right? It's gonna take 6 to 8 weeks. The authorized dealer doesn't have another watch they could even give you if they wanted it, so it's like, do you want it, do you not? You send it back, and then you wait, and that's the worst feeling I could imagine for someone that maybe saved up a very long time, walk in, buy their dream watch, and have a hair on it. That's just, it's not a great experience. It's gonna happen 1 in a million people, something like that, I'm speculating. But that's kind of what happens, right? And that's something you have to keep in mind is when you do buy the new watch, that's really the last step. And the brands are always generally very welcoming to help you. They want you to have a good experience at the end of the day. Whether or not some people feel like you've had one, it's not like the brand wants you to feel bad about their products, right? Like what kind of business would that be? It'd be pretty sick and twisted, honestly. But it's just the reality of the situation. You have to wait, and it becomes between you and the brand. Now, I have seen some authorized dealers out there. I can't really name it. It's on a conditional basis. It also depends on inventory and who knows, a multitude of factors. And even when we've sold new watches through authorized dealers using what we do with our network and our the way that we source new watches, occasionally you have something, maybe someone's unhappy, or maybe something particular with that watch just didn't settle with them. It's always something that can be resolved if the watch is available, especially through us. That's something we take a lot of pride in. But there is also a certain level that the authorized dealer could really go above and beyond to make sure that you're happy, get you another one, give you a refund. But then it's on to them to work that out with the brands, and that's generally just not the process because the watch has already been put really into your name, depending on the brand. So ultimate recourse in cap and summation is once you buy the watch new, the warranty's in your name, the warranty starts, even if it's right past the point of you walking out the door, it becomes between you and the manufacturer at that point. But the authorized dealer or the dealer, make sure you trust them because they could do something to keep you happy even though they don't have to. That's something that I always like to take pride in with Del Rey Watch. But what do you guys think? Are there any other kind of stories you might have or situations where maybe you bought a new watch from a dealer, direct from a dealer, and it didn't come as intended? This could be Seiko, this could be Rolex, you name it. I would love to see it and hear it in the comments below. Please do not forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. You can check me out on Instagram, TheRealJohnP, SinclairStraps.com for your favorite watch straps, as well as DelReyWatch.com for watches. And we'll see you next time. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.